Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's great to have you all here. I do wish it was under a little bit better circumstance, but to ease the mind, we've got a couple of big brains joining us. I'm sure most of the audience has heard by now that Bybit, Dubai-based crypto exchange, suffered a hack recently, and they had close to $1.5 billion worth of crypto stolen. This was obviously huge, and not only the largest crypto hack in history, but ended up leading to about $4 billion of outflows from Bybit's platform. So, of course, this has put a little bit of unease across the industry, but we are here to hopefully make everyone feel a little bit better. And to give us some insights, we have some members of the BitGo team. My name is Mike. I'm a product marketing manager here at BitGo, and we've got Bryce Trueman, product manager, and Richard Reinders, who is our CISO, Chief Information Security Officer. So they are here. They are going to walk us through kind of exactly, well, at least what we know, what happened, and go over some things to make sure that you are all prepared for basically anything that happens moving into the future. So I would love to just kind of start out asking Richard a question, and just to kick things off. Obviously, there's been a lot of news coverage about this. It's all over Twitter X. It's all over LinkedIn. It's all over every crypto news source. So we essentially do know who the perpetrators are. Then I'd love for you to kind of like start breaking down like what do we know about them, and kind of what does it say about the general state of security and across the crypto industry today.
Yeah, and thank you for having me today. So yeah, we know who the perpetrators are. They're commonly known as the Lazarus Group. They are North Korean state actors. They've had quite a bit of success with their attacks. Definitely eye-catching numbers. Over time, this group has become the apex predator in the space because they started off with weaker players in the industry, and from there kept developing their skills and their capabilities, and now they've become an issue for even more well-established players that are making the right moves. And now, because crypto is seeing a boom cycle, the return on the investment that these attackers are seeing make it more interesting. If you think about, like, you've got $100 that you're trying to keep safe, you're not going to spend $1 million to protect that or to steal that. But if all of a sudden you have $1 billion, well, you might want to spend $1 million worth of resources in order to get to that billion. And we've been tracking this group's continual improvement and progress, and we're taking steps along the way, adjusting as necessary. But this is not new. This has been going on for some time. Even the attack itself isn't new in many ways. This has happened to other places as well. Now, we're not perfect, but we do have a pretty good track record, and we're going to keep paying attention to how things develop.
Excellent. Yeah, as you said, it's we have seen some similar attacks before, but I think what was surprising here was actually the size of the dollar amount of the attack. So I guess I think would be really great, Richard, also just to continue on, is could you give us kind of a brief overview of the attack, kind of what we know about how the attackers were able to gain access to the wallet and ultimately the funds?
Yeah, and in some ways, this is similar to breaches at other places. You're right that the dollar amount, of course, does change things somewhat. The issue with this particular breach is it's very new. And so as time goes on, new facts will become available and new information. But what we have so far is a fairly good understanding, especially given information that became available today from both Safe and Bybit. So we can put together some of the pieces of the puzzle. At one point, a developer, had their machine compromised, and likely that's through phishing. That's a common tactic that Lazarus Group likes to use, but it could have been through other means as well. But once they were on that machine, they were able to do their reconnaissance, figure out how the place worked, and they were able to place a malicious script on the Safe Wallet website. And by doing that, they could specifically target Bybit's wallet because, of course, it was so large. To prepare for the attack, these attackers also deployed some smart contracts utilizing a kind of a functionality called delegate call that exists in some multi-sig wallets, but not every multi-sig wallet. For example, BitGo's multi-sig wallets for custody do not use this kind of functionality. But by combining these pieces, they were able to execute their attack. And so when Bybit employees were presented with a transaction, they signed it, and it turned out that transaction did something very different from what they intended it to do, at which point they were able to move the funds to their to basically their own wallets rather than the intended place, in amounts that were way more than intended. And from there, they have control of these funds. They're trying to find a way to launder it, move it around, and bring it into a place that they can spend it and do things with it.
Exciting. Excuse me. I mean, obviously, as a CISO, right? You're part of your job is like keeping track of all of this stuff and understanding kind of how BitGo can position itself and posture itself to essentially prevent this from happening. So I guess just kind of like at a certain level, like what, as a CISO of BitGo, what are you taking away from that hack?
Yeah, definitely a lot of different angles to consider. Every time there's a new event, we do look at that. We do try and learn from that. But what we found in this case is that we have a very strong model and ways to keep assets safe. So there isn't the same kind of risk there, and definitely not the same kind of vulnerabilities. Our philosophy has considered this from the beginning. We actually have major philosophical differences for what actually makes a wallet secure and how to keep that. Our philosophy so far is proving itself that the way we approach it is working. We have a long track record with it, but it just underscores for us again that we have to stay committed to the state of the art of security and constantly keep leveling up as attackers do. We do have certain approaches that make a big difference. The way we do our offline signing, our custody, the way we just approach every step of the transaction process just makes a big difference. But of course, we never want to pretend that anything is impossible, that it unbreakable. That's why we have extra lines, right? We have, for example, $250 million in insurance. So think about what that means from the insurance company's point of view. They have to be really comfortable with BitGo in order to sign up for such a sum. And we have to, of course, take actions that confirm for them that it's worth taking on that kind of liability.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a perfect segue there. Kind of like getting a little high level of what BitGo does, but I think maybe, Bryce, it would be good to transition here to you. If you could maybe just give us maybe a little bit more of an overview of how BitGo's products protects client funds. Just give us an overview would be great. And again, like I think this is really important, right? Especially in just this week. But yeah, if you could do that for us, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so kind of what Richard mentioned, I think is the right way to think about it. It's those layers of security. So you can't just have one layer. those are all going to be vulnerable at some point in time. And so you have to have those separate layers that keep the funds safe. So I would say at the lowest layer, you have how the keys are generated in the first place. So they're generated purely offline. They're held and stored in bank grade vaults. As Richard mentioned, the transaction signing is actually happening offline as well. So once you know with certainty that those keys are safe and they can't be tampered with, then you basically have how those clients interact with those wallets that they're then created. And so when you actually create a wallet, you actually have functionality to choose who do I want to have what permission across these wallets. And then I have policies that I can add on top of those wallets as well to make sure that every transaction that goes through is actually evaluated by our policy engine to make sure that the appropriate rules take place. So I think it's those layers between the lowest layer of the keys and the application layer with the policies and the user permissions that really keep things safe. As Richard mentioned, there's a unique way of kind of processing all of these transactions that BitGo does a little bit differently. And I think that really speaks to the safety of keeping your funds at BitGo.
Absolutely. And I mean, we definitely have like talk about this a lot in our own materials. So it's obviously a core tenet of what we do and everything that we built. So I mean, and in a way, I think it seems like these are like table stakes, right? Like across the industry, this is how things should be built. I mean, and we see a lot of services that are similar. But I guess like specific to BitGo, right? Specific to this application layer that you're talking about. What can you dive in a bit more about how that bolsters like kind of the underlying architecture and infrastructure that BitGo has?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things there. The first is probably the ability that BitGo provides, which is you can have multiple different types of wallets. And so what we see a majority of our clients doing is actually building a architecture around these types of wallets and the features of those wallets. So to be specific, we have our custody wallets. Those are completely and purely offline. Those typically hold the vast majority of a client's funds. You have the standby wallets, which are really just meant as an intermediary between those cold storage and those majority of funds. And then you have your deposit and withdrawal wallets. Those are typically the wallets that interact with the outside world. Those have to, by nature, just be a little less secure or locked down, just because they are kind of interacting with potentially thousands of addresses or unknown kind of destinations. And the idea here is you really lock down every flow of funds. And so you know, okay, if I'm going from cold, I can only go into my standby. If I'm going from my standby, I can kind of go both directions, but nowhere else to the outside world. And then from my deposit withdrawal, then I have the ability and the flexibility to receive funds from the outside world and also kind of broadcast. So the unique thing about BitGo is that with this setup, you can keep a vast majority of your funds completely safe and locked in offline storage that can only be signed by trust officers. There's a variety of security mechanisms on those wallets specifically. And then you kind of leave a little bit of flexibility towards the end to get those funds out in a much faster way when you need them.
Cool. And like on this point, how does, you know, I mean, I'm sure there's not a one size fits all answer here, but like how do you decide, you know, what you put where, how much do you put where, and like how do you make those decisions?
Yeah, so it really comes down to the specific business and kind of what makes sense for their operations. Obviously, if you think of somebody like a platform, their setup might look completely different than let's say a financial institution or maybe a venture capitalist firm. So you really have to look at your own operations and understand, okay, what do we really need with these funds? How are we going to interact with them on a day-to-day basis? And then what we provide is kind of to your point around this application layer are these policies to lock down every step of the way. And you can leverage these really customizable policies on each type of wallet to make sure that each one is safe. So a good example here is these roles and responsibilities. Only give people the permissions that they actually need. Don't add somebody as an admin just for the sake of it. Make sure they really do need to be an admin. You can also make sure that users who need to approve transactions, you can leverage the policies to do that as well. And so it really comes down to evaluating how does my business work and how can I really tailor these policies to fine tune what I need as a business. And kind of one example of that is our policies are really customizable. And what you can do as a business is look at your own types of transactions. So an example would be, what is a typical transaction out of a deposit and withdrawal wallet? Is it somewhere around $100 or is it $50,000? You can kind of do that type of analysis and then figure out, what does an anomaly look like? What is kind of unusual behavior? And then you can really try to catch just those types of transactions. So it really does come down to understanding your operations, using the BitGo kind of policy engine and platform to customize and tailor to your specific needs, to make sure that you get obviously the most secure option, but also something that is operationally reasonable for what your needs are.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like some guardrails. It's like putting the bumpers up when you're bowling. So you can you don't get a gutter, but you can sense, but still knock some pins down. Awesome. That's really great. And I actually also, like, if we can too, just want to like do a little plug here too for that, because I think a big piece of what the application layer of BitGo is, well, it's maybe like a network layer, is what we call the Go network. Can you speak to that and how that also kind of plays into like another layer of security?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the cool things about the Go network is these funds are completely stored offline and in cold storage. So first and foremost, those funds never even need to reach a hot wallet. And so what that means is you can actually keep your funds in cold storage. You can use the Go network to connect with your kind of trusted counterparties, and you can send funds back and forth off chain, which happens instantaneously. So you layer that with all of the policies as well. And so you have funds never leaving cold storage. You have policies that are evaluating on every transaction. And you also have this connected kind of counterparty. So I trust Mike, Mike trusts me. We can send funds back and forth to each other. And it really just locks down that flow of funds. And so we know exactly where they're going at all times. And it just leaves a lot less room for error.
Awesome. Very cool. Yeah. I don't know if you should trust me, but you know, it's a fair enough example. Awesome. Very cool. So, I mean, obviously, Richard, I think I'd like to go back to you. I think, right, like looking back at the attack, right, like now what? You know, like what are the repercussions for Bybit? What are the repercussions for the broader industry? You know, how should everyone kind of not just feel, but also like, you know, how should they think about the future?
Yeah, and I'm sorry. I'm thinking about Bybit, and I have to say they've been very classy in how they've approached things. They're trying to be very transparent. They're ensuring that their customers don't experience any kind of loss. Bybit recently started a kind of a bug bounty program, a recovery program. So some of these funds may be recovered. Some of them are in a frozen state already. So when you think about, you know, this attack group trying to launder the funds so they can go and do something with it, they have to go through intermediaries. And if those intermediaries in the industry help freeze those funds, then it, you know, can be returned to Bybit. I think Bybit is in a good position to make it through and survive, but it is going to be diminished. You know, after a breach, people naturally want to pull their funds from a place that's experienced an issue and then put it somewhere else, and they're looking for a safe place to put it. And that becomes a real question because you know, these state actors, it's you know, we call it Lazarus, maybe trader. We say it's North Korean state actors. But really, what we're dealing with is a group of human beings that are smart, capable, well-resourced, that understand many systems better than a company's own employees might, and they're going to continue to adapt and improve, and they're searching for their next target and their next and their next. And you know, once this particular tactic stops working, they will come with a new tactic that's effective. And so we've been tracking, you know, this for some time as one of the potential you know, sources of breaches. But if people are just kind of now realizing that this is a potential issue, then now is also the time to make sure that we're ready for what's next, to do that review, to make sure that your funds are in a way stored, that they're safe, that you understand how the whole process works from beginning to end, and that you're comfortable that it's going to be secure in the face of sophisticated attacks.
Excellent. And I'm assuming, right? Like, I mean, I know, but like, I'll frame it as a question. I'm assuming BitGo is doing this exact thing. Yes. What is BitGo doing to stay safe? What do we do? Again, we kind of talked about our infrastructure. We kind of talked about the application layer. What else are we doing to be prepared?
Yeah, I think it's always dangerous to think too highly of yourself. I think we should all have some humility in this. Everybody can always learn something new. We've been confident in our approach and our philosophy, but I don't think it's good enough for us to just rely on our own opinions and thoughts. And so one thing that we rely on is going to third parties that have expertise in a particular area and have them check our work and get their feedback. And that can be from the wider world. We operate an open bug bounty program. Anybody can submit issues. That can be from companies that perform penetration tests, see if there's flaws. It can be specific firms in the industry that are really great at particular items. But we also do full-on red team exercises where we hire a firm to spend months to break into our company and give us that kind of experience to ensure that there are no issues, that we can track that behavior and catch it before it becomes an issue. I think that BitGo has been doing a good job in the industry, but one thing that we do care about is making sure that we remember the big picture. I don't think we should focus on just the one tactic that worked. There will be more different approaches. So we're trying to always think long term as well and put ourselves in a strong position all around so that when a new tactic pops up, that just doesn't immediately leave us exposed in some way. Besides the way we do our wallets that we believe in, there's product level security that gives an additional layer of protection that we have and a customer can customize to their needs. I think that bad things will continue to happen, so we do want to consider this notion of, okay, so when that happens, how do we mitigate damage? How do we reduce the blast radius? So for example, trying not to have single wallets contain so much in the way of funds and do proper management of wallets and splitting up those funds and ensuring that if there is an issue that doesn't mean that everything is lost. So we got the track record. We really do not want to ever lose it, and we're definitely going to be doing our part to try and keep it that way.
Yeah, amazing. And I think what I like about what you said is like it's there's two sides. It's like it's not really about fear, but it's also not about overconfidence. It's about kind of like being realistic about what the scenario is or what it could become.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that really candid and lucid take. Awesome. We are starting to run out of time. So Bryce, I don't know if could you just kind of summarize for us maybe what people can be sure to take away from today's chat?
Yeah. So I think at a really high level, I think it's really important to be intentional about everything that you do. So as Richard mentioned, this is just one kind of instance of this. They're going to keep coming. There are going to be other issues, and we need to try our best to prepare for those that when they inevitably do come up. So some of the kind of specific things and more general things, leveraging multi-sig wallets whenever you can and always. In this specific case, our wallets don't leverage the delegate call, but like I said, it could be something entirely different in the future. And so we're doing everything that we possibly can now to prepare for anything that might come up in the future. Secondly is just keeping the funds in an insured qualified custodian. You never want anything bad to happen, but you do want to be prepared if it does. Thinking that it will never happen is also a slightly naive approach as well. And so you do want to be prepared. really, BitGo providing the functionality and the customizability is a big piece of this, where you can kind of get to the setup that you need to support your business and minimizes risk as much as possible. And that's something that our platform really supports. Keeping the funds offline, obviously, whenever you can, just minimize that damage again, and think long term. I think that's the biggest takeaway that I have from this personally is be really aware of what's going on in the environment. Try to think through what things could be coming up, and be really self-critical to figure out what are the things that we're not thinking about that we should be thinking about.
Awesome, definitely. Yeah, I think those are all amazing points. I really appreciate both of you taking the time to talk about this, because again, it has been very top of mind, not just for us, but across crypto, across finance. I mean, like across a lot of different industries. And I think it's, again, just want to reiterate here to everyone that's watching that obviously, of course, BitGo is extremely committed to security. It's been our bread and butter for over a decade, with, as Richard and Bryce brought up, a proven track record. And it's super important to be aware of who you're choosing as your third-party providers when it comes to things like this, because again, malicious actors, they're always evolving, they're always changing. And again, it's not to be scary. It's just the fact of the matter. But so yes, thank you all for joining us. We will be sharing a bunch of useful resources across all of our channels. And so be sure to keep an eye out. But I mean, whether you're already a BitGo customer or you're not, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. If you have questions or you want to learn more about BitGo or crypto security in general, definitely reach out to us. We're available literally everywhere. So yes, thank you all for coming, and hope to see you again soon. Thanks, Bryce. Thanks, Richard.